In the American South of the 1950s, where piety and violence coexist in the same breath, there lived a writer who saw God's judgment in the most unexpected places. Her name was Flannery O'Connor, and her complete stories are a collection of 32 tales that will stay with you long after you finish reading. Not because they comfort you, but because they haunt you. O'Connor grew up in rural Georgia, shaped by Catholic faith in a predominantly Protestant region, observing the peculiar blend of Southern manners, religious fervor, and barely concealed cruelty that defined her world. She died at just 39, yet in her brief life she crafted stories of astonishing power, tales where ordinary people encounter extraordinary moments of spiritual reckoning. Her characters are often grotesque, not in appearance alone, but in spirit. They are selfish, proud, judgmental, and blind to their own sins. And yet in these stories, grace arrives. But it does not come gently. It comes through violence, humiliation, and the shattering of illusions. This is the world of Flannery O'Connor, a place where God does not comfort the comfortable, but disturbs them utterly. The most famous story in her collection is A Good Man is Hard to Find. It begins innocuously enough. A family is driving to Florida for a vacation. The grandmother, a woman obsessed with propriety and her own virtue, sits in the front seat wearing her Sunday best. Because, as she says, if they were to have an accident, she wants to be dressed well so people will know she is a lady. Her vanity is almost comic if it weren't so utterly tragic. Along the way, the grandmother remembers an old plantation house she once visited, and she convinces the family to detour from the highway to find it. This small act of manipulation sets everything in motion. They turn onto a dirt road, and soon the car overturns. As the family sits dazed in the wreckage, a car approaches. Inside are 3 men. One of them is the misfit, a brutal criminal and killer who has escaped from prison. The family realizes their danger too late. The grandmother, now confronted with death, tries desperately to appeal to the misfit's humanity. She tells him he is not a bad man, that he must be a good Christian. She reaches out to touch him, perhaps to comfort him or manipulate him one last time. The misfit shoots her. And as she lies dying, the final words of the story suggest that something, perhaps grace, has passed between them. The grandmother has encountered her true self only in the moment of death. Everything she believed about herself was stripped away, and in her final second, she saw clearly. This is O'Connor's terrible gift. She shows us that we cannot know ourselves until we are broken. Throughout the complete stories, O'Connor returns again and again to a particular kind of character, the spiritual blind leading the blind. There is the young intellectual in Wise Blood who believes he can reject God and construct his own religion of nothingness. There is the Bible salesman in Good Country People who seduces a woman with a wooden leg, steals her prosthetic, and leaves her stranded in a hayloft, a con man masquerading as simple and good. There is the mother in Why Don't You Dance, who clings so desperately to appearances and social status that she cannot see her own child's suffering. O'Connor's grotesque characters are almost always people who have constructed elaborate defenses around their hearts. They are proud of their intelligence, their morality, their refinement, their position in society. And their pride is precisely what blinds them. A man believes he is too smart for faith. A woman believes she is too refined to be ordinary. A grandmother believes she is a lady, therefore she must be good. These beliefs are not merely wrong, they are fatal. O'Connor strips them away through violence, betrayal, and shock. Her stories do not allow for gradual moral improvement or comfortable redemption. Instead, they force a moment of absolute clarity in which the character truly sees who they are and what they have done or failed to do. One of the most spiritually complex stories in the collection is The Artificial Nigger. The title itself is provocative. It refers to a lawn ornament, a racist caricature that once sat in many Southern yards. An old man and his grandson travel by train to the city. The grandfather is full of racial pride and contempt, convinced of Southern white superiority. The grandson is young and innocent, still learning the world through his grandfather's eyes. When they arrive in the city, they become lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood. The grandfather is terrified and ashamed. He has been reduced to asking for directions, to admitting ignorance. And then they encounter the lawn ornament, that grotesque figure that represents everything the grandfather believes he stands above. But in that moment, something shifts. The grandfather sees in that degraded image a reflection of his own degradation. He has been humbled. He has been lost. He too is vulnerable and foolish. The story ends with the grandfather and grandson walking together, the grandfather now capable of actual love for the boy because his pride has been destroyed. This is not redemption in the sense of becoming better or happier. It is redemption through the annihilation of the false self. The grace that arrives is almost unbearable because it requires the death of everything we believed about ourselves. Violence in O'Connor's stories is never arbitrary. It is not shock for shock's sake. Instead, it is the inevitable collision between a world of illusion and the terrible reality of truth. A violent moment in an O'Connor story is almost always a moment of divine intervention, not in the sense that God approves of the violence, but in the sense that the violence breaks through the comfortable lies we tell ourselves. In Parker's Back, a man becomes obsessed with getting a tattoo of a religious icon across his entire body. His wife, a stern fundamentalist, initially objects, but when he finally reveals the tattoo, she beats him with a broom, bloodying his back. The violence is shocking, yet it is also the moment in which his wife's rigid faith is challenged to become something more real, something that must grapple with the messy embodied fact of her husband's spiritual longing. In A View of the Woods, an old man and his granddaughter stand together against the girl's parents who want to sell land to a developer. The old man and the girl are allies in their opposition to progress and commercial exploitation. But then they quarrel, and in a moment of fury, the old man pushes the child down a gully. She dies. And as the old man crawls after her, dying himself, he finally understands the nature of his own pride and possessiveness. He has killed the one person who truly understood him, all because he could not admit he was wrong. The violence here is not punishment from outside. It is the inevitable unfolding of character, the moment when hidden cruelty and pride become visible, destructive, and irreversible. What makes Flannery O'Connor's complete stories so enduring is that they refuse easy answers. She does not tell us that good people are rewarded and bad people punished. Instead, she shows us that goodness and badness are far more complicated than we imagine. A criminal like the misfit may understand grace more truly than a self-righteous grandmother. A Bible salesman may be more honest about human nature than a woman who prides herself on her education. A racist grandfather may find genuine love only after his pride is shattered. O'Connor believed deeply in Catholic theology, particularly in the concept of grace as unearned and often unwelcome. Her characters do not choose to be redeemed. Redemption comes to them as a shock, often through suffering and loss. And because these stories are so unflinching in their portrayal of human selfishness and blindness, and because grace in O'Connor's world never feels cheap or sentimental, her fiction has a kind of spiritual weight that is rare in literature. The takeaway from reading the complete stories is not a moral lesson or a self-help revelation. Instead, it is a deeper humility about ourselves. O'Connor teaches us to see our own pride, our own blindness, our own capacity for cruelty disguised as virtue. She teaches us that we cannot save ourselves, that our illusions about who we are will eventually be shattered, and that in that shattering, if we are lucky, something like grace might arrive. Her stories are not comfortable, but they are necessary. They are the work of a writer who looked at the human condition with absolute unflinching honesty and asked the hardest questions about faith, redemption, and whether God speaks most clearly through violence or through love. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through Flannery O'Connor's disturbing and brilliant stories, subscribe for more book summaries and new stories like this. You won't want to miss what's next.